Former President Donald Trump has been accused of violating his gag order for the 10th time, yes, the 10th time since the hush money trial began less than a month ago. Judge Juan Merchan ordered Trump to pay $1,000 for criticizing jurors and warned him that he could face jail time if he violates the gag order yet again. Now, this time, the judge found that Trump violated the order when he said the jury was picked too quickly and that 95% of them are Democrats. The gag order prohibits Trump from insulting witnesses, jurors, prosecutors, court staff, or the judge's family. Trump argues these restrictions violate his First Amendment rights. Now, the judge told Trump, quote, "The last thing I want to do is put you in jail, but at the end of the day, I have a job to do."
In other Trump news, talk show host and longtime Trump critic Bill Maher said he'd keep his cool if Trump wins the 2024 election.
I'm not going to go nuts again if he wins another term. I just can't.
Maher went on to say that he wasn't going to turn into one of those anxious millennials mocking his friends who say the world is ending. Now, there's some truth to that, Robbie. I'm not a Bill Maher fan, but I do think that there are a lot of people who think Trump is the person who made, politics bad or politics broken in the United States. And I think what Trump really did is reveal cracks and fractures that were already obviously there. Trump wouldn't be Trump without a bunch of people who support Donald Trump and who agree with what he says. And so I think to say that Donald Trump's breaking our politics and is the big problem, if you disagree with the stuff he stands for and those sentiments, he didn't instill those ideas in the masses. He maybe ignited them and made people get behind one candidate and say them out loud and go to rallies and make signs about them. But I don't think we can blame Donald Trump for, the support he has, which was a political movement in the United States that just needed a leader to unify it. And so I think now we have way more people paying attention to politics, way more people calling out the corruption that we have in the U.S. And I think that makes a lot of these liberal elite types like Bill Maher uncomfortable. And that's really what they're talking about when they're afraid of Donald Trump. They want to scapegoat him for the political environment in the United States that he stepped into, but definitely didn't create.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Bill Maher and a lot of people like him recognize that their reaction to Trump winning in 2016 was hysterical in a way that was not healthy for social discourse about political issues, was not healthy for their own mental wellness, was dramatic. And then the actual Trump presidency, and you can certainly disagree with his policies, if many liberals do. I disagree with aspects of his policy. There are other aspects of his policies, his foreign policy, where I wish he had actually stuck to his guns more or listened to the people, the kind of contrarian, anti-interventionist ethos that he was really able to capitalize on when he was running for president. I wish he had been able to, transform how Washington works in accordance with that vision a little bit more successfully. I think, frankly, sometimes Trump disappointed his followers, although they're reluctant to admit that he has any faults at all, by not living up to the expectations of the things he talked about. His rhetoric is pretty wild for a major political figure, but the actual governance was not all that different from previous Republican administrations. He's more serious about cutting down or cracking down on illegal immigration, or at least in what he talked about. But that's actually well in keeping with what the American people want. It's not what liberal political pundits want, but it broadly reflects public opinion. It's reflected in the fact that now Donald Trump is way more trusted on the economy and on immigration, the top two issues in most polls, by the American people. And it's why he might very well be returned to the White House. Now, obviously Trump, I think, his antics around the 2020 election and contesting it and delegitimizing it were very bad and were well outside the norm of American politics, and frankly only hurt his own position, his own bid to return to the White House, because A, it didn't work and it was laughed out of court, and it has made some normie people who might otherwise want Trump back or want Trump's economy back just can't stomach voting for him because of how he behaved there. So I understand all of that, but I think broadly speaking it'll be a good thing if liberal political pundits like Bill Maher recalibrate their expectations somewhat.
Absolutely. You can't expect the American people to support candidates that don't make good on the promises they make. And I get that Donald Trump is guilty of that as well. But Biden was delivered the presidency with the progressive vote. And then he got into office and he didn't even try to codify, women's right to choose as soon as getting into office, something he promised to do time and time again. He didn't immediately take action on canceling student loan debt, which was another major promise. And now young people are really upset about his handling of foreign policy. And so you can't be terribly upset if Donald Trump wins without realizing a part of this is Biden's performance as president that would deliver Donald Trump the presidency in 2024. And to say that, you're doing bad things for the country, you're spoiling the election if you vote for a third party. What kind of a democracy do we have if you're forcing people to vote for candidates that they don't support? And they're saying we need to support Biden because he'll save democracy. You can't say that in the same sentence. You're telling people to vote for a candidate they don't want to vote for, that hasn't made good on policy promises and has in fact supported policies that they really hate, and policies that have led to the death of 30,000 innocent people in Palestine. And so I think we're at this point in time where there needs to be a really big reckoning with who we're voting for and why, and really get down to brass tacks. Let's look at what wages are. Let's look at how we're making policies to avoid inflation. Let's look at how we're improving infrastructure. Yes, let's look at foreign policy. Let's look at public spending, but let's also get very real about what the actual impact of policies are, because today you have people looking at, the protesters being arrested by militarized police and posting on Twitter saying things like, this is what the country would look like if we have another Trump presidency, but this is the country under Biden. And so if we're upset about that, and it's a Biden presidency, we can't really be that upset when Trump gets elected and does the same thing. When Donald Trump was putting children in cages, it was the biggest, media stunt in Iowa when I was there for the election, to put baby dolls in makeshift cages to point out to people this is what's happening at the southern border. And then the detainment policies continue under Biden, and we don't make a stink about it because it's a Democratic president. So it's time to get really real about policies instead of getting confused about what people stand for because they're on the team we usually vote for.
Let's briefly touch on the gag order news that we discussed. So, I don't know that it's a First Amendment issue because courts, judges do have rights to set limits on things people can say about the trial going on. But I frankly am troubled by Donald Trump being prohibited from talking about, from claiming the process is unfair to him in terms as abstract as that, saying he thinks the jury was selected too quickly, and pointing out that they largely lean Democratic. Do you really think he should be barred from saying that? I totally get stopping him from saying more specific things about the jury that would help members of the public identify them and makes them unsafe, although the media has already done that, to be clear. I think Trump can be, barred from threatening the judge's family, all of that, sure, I get it, but just saying that the jury is unfair for these reasons in a general terms, talking about the entire construction of the jury, and he gets fined for saying that, and they're going to throw him in jail if he says it again? I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that at all.
I'm not comfortable with it for a specific reason. I think a lot of people see this and they immediately apply this just to Donald Trump. Okay, of course we know Donald Trump will maybe lie if the process is going perfectly fine. He might try and say, it's not going fine. We don't have due process of the law here. And then he has an excuse for if he's found guilty. Well, the trial was ridiculous, and I told you this all along, right? It's a classic Trump tactic. And yeah, when we think about Donald Trump, we're like, yeah, he probably shouldn't be able to say that. But let's imagine this was someone who's facing, charges, who's a regular citizen, who can't get out on bail, who actually doesn't face a fair trial. Imagine if they had a gag order. Imagine if they couldn't speak publicly about what was going on. That doesn't feel like justice. That doesn't feel right. And so seeing it happen to Donald Trump, yeah, think about it in the context of, yes, Donald Trump would do this, but if this same exact gag order was placed on a regular person who's trying to have a trial, if we believe in innocent until proven guilty and we believe in the due process of law, we want people to say, hey, this isn't happening fairly. We want people to be allowed to speak about corruption in the justice system in the US. And, even if you're on the left, imagine if the same restrictions were placed on people on the left. And I think people don't tend to do that when we talk about this stuff. It's really this, if it happens to my team, it's bad, but if it happens to their team, it's good. And we don't think about the ramifications for the American public ourselves, our family members. And I think once you do, it's like, yeah, this is an overstepping of power by this judge.
That's a good point, especially if you want to inspire the public to be confident in the outcome of the election. I mean, I hate to point it out. I don't know if that should be the judges or weigh in on the judge's calculation, but if Trump loses after he was jailed for complaining about the unfairness of the process, that's going to make a lot of people think the process was actually unfair. And that's something the media, we talked about the media pressing Tim Scott to promise to say the election outcome was fair no matter what happens. This is something the press is really concerned about, but there is going to be a lack of confidence in the outcome if conservatives perceive that the process was unfair. And I think doing this kind of thing is exactly what's going to play into that expectation. That does it for us today on Rising. We will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks, Jessica, so much for filling in.
Thanks for having me, Robbie. Bye, y'all.